So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the Nainital Literature Festival, ably being steered by Amitabh and his team. We've had an absolutely incredible last 2 days between yesterday and today. I think the insights, the people that one has gotten to know, it's the sheer body of work, the sheer body of knowledge which has been on display, I think has been quite a moving experience, certainly for me, and I'm sure for friends on this panel as well. So we set out to look at the subject called the Great Game. When Amitabh first reached out to me and he told me about these great luminaries who need no introduction, from Aniruddh to Vikas Swarup to Mr. Raghavan to Pushpesh, all of them experts in their own field, as was suggested by the anchor. The Great Game, when we first started talking about it, we were looking at it in the context of geopolitics post Donald Trump being elevated as the president. It was the time when US was imposing tariffs, but we live in extremely unpredictable, uncertain times. So by the time we actually came to Nainital, the Great Game has been replaced by one simple question: are we bombing Pakistan? So I hope that we'll be able to make some sense of the events which have been unfolding around us. I'm sure you're all aware of what had happened, the unfortunate event which unfolded in Pahalgam. The loss of human lives, in the circumstances that those lives were lost, the consequential, national, very justifiable outrage that we've been looking at. It makes me feel that 2025, this conflict, I think this time around, is posing questions and challenges which we may not have seen before. Yes, we've seen terror strikes before. Yes, the state of Jammu and Kashmir has gone through this cycle of violence on multiple occasions. But this time around, it appears to be a little different. Is it social media? Is it mainstream media? I don't know, and I look forward to the wisdom of this panel. So let me first start with you, Pushpesh. It's great to have two career diplomats with us, as well as an academic and a deep financial mind. Let me ask you from a domestic political sense. This attack that happened, this terror strike which happened, why do you think the responses that we are getting from north, south, east, west, it appears to be, at least if you go by the media perception, the optics which are being created, that India wants a war? Does India really want a war against Pakistan?
No, I don't think so at all. I think what you said very rightly is that the title changed from Great Game to something which is terrible. I think I just finished doing a column, and my problem is that most of the time when I'm introduced as a food person, I realize that is angne mein mera kya kaam hai. I mean, there are Mr. Raghavan, who has served as the High Commissioner in Pakistan, and Mr. Swarup is there, who has served as High Commissioner in Canada, where also has been some very interesting things, that when we tried the cloaks and daggers, and hamare kitne lambe haath hain, so it sort of backfired. Pakistan, he will look after it much better. My problem is that something which has changed this time is that the world has changed. Pehle jab terror strike hota tha, so the India was saying that I have to do a very nice tightrope balancing act. What I did in a column this morning was that the game has changed from tightrope walking to trapeze, jumping into dark space, hoping against hope that one of faces you don't recognize will catch you and take you to the safety.
Hasn't India also changed? When you say world has changed,
No.
Let me just qualify that. You see, last time when Pulwama airstrikes happened, right? When the Pulwama terror strike happened, what did we do? We gave a response, which was a surgical strike, an airstrike. So, is there a bar which has now been set when it comes to Indian response to an act?
No, I would again beg to differ, because when you talk of a surgical strike, you talk of a air strike or whatever it is, the net result was that there was a poor wing commander which was bailed out and a goodwill gesture returned to us. So you might keep thumping your back and say, "Humne ghazab kar diya, ye kar diya, wo kar diya." So without getting into breastbeat, I mean, we live between breastbeating and chest thumping. Meet Tarzan, and then suddenly something happens, So the problem is that India had changed, not since Mr. Modi came to power, but India was changing slowly ever since the Kargil, ever since Atal Bihari Vajpayee's Peace Yatra and so on. I still insist that the major change is that if Trump says that there are three powers which have to carve out the world into their spheres, so there is one is America, Monroe Doctrine, isolationism, interventionism, whatever. One is Xi Jinping, the principal adversary. Then there is Putin, who's somebody can pierce into his eyes and see his soul and get taken for a ride. But then I was watching this interview, आप सब लोगों ने शायद देखा हो, between Chuck Higgins and Bill, CIA director, where they said that, look, the point is that you may hate Putin, but you cannot disregard history, and Mr. Raghavan is such an accomplished historian. The Russia started in Khiva. So you cannot imagine Russia not having Khiva, if not as a part of its territory, as its sphere of influence. But there is no space in this world for India. Or you may courteously say that India be a...
Well, you're saying India does not have the space on the high table.
India doesn't have the power to punish Pakistan or exterminate the roots of terror there.
That's a good, sharp question, and absolutely the right point for Mr. Raghavan to come in. Do we have the power? Do we not have the power?
No, I think we have a great deal of power to do certain things. But if you pose the question in terms of doing things which are not feasible, then obviously it will appear that your power is not enough. Because you began with the premise that what is the kind of military action we are going to undertake?
It's a straight question.
No, but the
are
point,
we going to war?
But I think the point is that we have come to that decision that nothing else except military action matters. In the process, we are overlooking something very significant has been done. You see, something which was not done in 1965 during the war, 1971 during the war, during Kargil, during the Parliament attack, after the Mumbai attack, during all the numerous instances of terrorist attacks we have faced, no one has touched the Indus Waters Treaty. Because for good reason. I mean, and that good reason is common sense. That if you are fighting with your neighbor, you don't shut his water off because you don't know what he's going to do next. For this time, perhaps for reasons which the government has, after due consideration, and given the nature of the outrage which has been visited on us, you have done something, therefore, very, very significant. So let's not underestimate it and jump straight, therefore, to the next scene. It's not like that.
So it's a calibrated approach.
I think, no, more than a calibrated approach, you have taken a very major step very early on. So let's be, it's not as if...
Let me challenge you a bit on that. You're saying that step has been taken. But look at all the statements which are coming from Pakistan. Bilawal today, has made a statement that if the water is stopped, firstly, there is a question mark on whether this water can really be stopped, whether this decision which has been taken by the Indian state can really be implemented. There is a debate on that front too. But the Pakistanis are making it clear, you stop water, will increase the intensity of this conflict with India. So what happens then?
No, the point of whatever responses you undertake or decide upon is to send a certain message. Now, when you say we will place the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, it's not a question of stopping the water, because the water doesn't flow because of the treaty. The water flows because of the hydrology of Southeast Asia.
So therefore, is it much ado about nothing?
No, it's not.
Is it that we can't stop it at the end of the day?
No, it's not much ado about nothing. The fact is, because Pakistan is a lower riparian, and because water issues have a history in the India-Pakistan context, it's a huge factor in their minds. And you are touching a very, very critical vulnerability. Whether it will have the impact or not, we don't know. We are in the early days of what is going to be a major crisis. But I think we shouldn't immediately think that what has been done diplomatically is of no consequence, and really the main act is going to be the military or the security or the coercive steps. I don't quite see it that way.
Okay, because you've served in Canada, and we've all seen what has happened between India and Canada in the most recent past. Other than, of course, other countries, you have a rich experience of being the director in Pakistan as well. When Mr. Raghavan takes this position, that look, a step has been taken, a decision has been taken. Let me contextualize it in the context of the sentiment which one is picking up from the American side. Donald Trump says this is a conflict which has been going on for a long time. Tulsi Gabbard, the National Security Director of the US, says that we are completely going to back India in this hot pursuit of getting hold of people who are the perpetrators of the crime which has been committed in Pahalgam. What's the position of the world community, the global community, when it comes to India mounting a response on the basis of Pahalgam?
Well, based on what we have seen so far since the attack in Pahalgam took place, I think the vast majority of the international community, including the top Islamic nations, are standing solidly behind India. Because they all recognize that what happened in Pahalgam was pure and simple terrorism. There is no ifs and buts about it. No cause can justify the slaughter of innocent civilians, 27 of them gunned down in cold blood on the basis of their religion. So there is no ifs and buts. It was pure and simple terrorism. And I think the threshold for terrorism in today's world, I think there is no threshold at all. I mean, no country wants to countenance that, including majority Islamic nations like Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc. Nobody wants to deal with terrorism. Post 9/11, the mood had started changing. And I think post October 7 in Israel also, you saw the entire world rally behind Israel. Later on, of course, the narrative started changing once the disproportionality of the Israeli response became evident. So as of today, I think the whole world is standing behind India. They all recognize that India has been facing cross-border terrorism. And what Ambassador Raghavan was saying, cross-border terrorism is the hardest kind of terrorism to fight. Because it's asymmetric, first of all. You have mask invaders type of people coming in, doing their mayhem, going back. And especially if they are backed by a foreign power, it becomes even more difficult. And that is why if you look at what happened after 2016, what happened after 2019, despite your surgical strikes, etc., have we been able to completely stop cross-border terrorism? The answer is no. And even whatever we do after this also, will we be able to stop completely cross-border terrorism? We cannot. As we have seen, even major powers, they cannot stop, lone wolf attacks and things like that, because that's the very nature of terrorism.
So therefore, are you suggesting that this entire debate which is going on right now, punish Pakistan, give a befitting military response to Pakistan, at the end of the day, is not going to solve the problem?
It will not solve the problem unless Pakistan fundamentally changes its behavior and stops using terrorism as a tool, as a proxy war against India. That is the whole issue. That for Pakistan, they have been trying to bleed India with 1,000 cuts. This has then been their stated policy. Till Pakistan changes that behavior, I think we are going to continue to have to deal with the scourge of cross-border
Just
terrorism.
help me understand this, Ambassador. Because last 2 to 3 years, see, for the longest time, for the global community, there was a hyphenation which existed between India and Pakistan. When it came to responding to India, whether it was the US, UK, Europe, anyone. Last few years, we saw that slowly Pakistan was beginning to fade away from our diplomatic memory, so to say, from certainly in the media. We were not looking at Pakistan with the same aggression, intensity that we do maybe 7-8 years back. What prompted this strike? The Indian state is convinced that it's backed by Pakistan, this terror strike. And I'm sure there are investigations which are on, and we'll get to the bottom of it soon. But assuming that it is Pakistan which is behind this, why do you think Pakistan would have done what it has done at this stage?
You see, explaining why a terrorist attack, especially a major attack, takes place at any point of time is difficult. We still don't know why, we're not 100% sure why something like Mumbai happened or why something like our attack on Parliament, because the timing, the context can help you understand up to a point, but it will not conclusively establish why this happened. Now, people have given any number of reasons. One possibility is the internal instability and the domestic crisis in Pakistan itself. Because of the nature of internal turmoil in Pakistan, perhaps this is a useful distraction, and it's a thesis with some merit in it. The other point of view is that there was this growing sense in Pakistan that the Indians think that Pakistan is now irrelevant, Kashmir is solved, Article 370 has been removed, and India thinks it's in a different league, so we need to give it a reality check. It's also a credible point of view, but you're not entirely sure, because a terrorist strike, a terrorist attack is also a tactical operation. To understand it, the full strategy behind it is not always very clear. What you do know, and this is from your historical experience, that Pakistan will never allow the status quo in Kashmir to continue unchecked. They will try to do what they can to upset the apple cart from time to time. That you can be reasonably confident about, and certainly that provides at least some of the explanation for why this attack is taking place now.
What do you make out of this statement which had been made? And I see a lot of, both in North and South Bloc, I see that a lot of references being made to the statement which was made by the Pakistani Army Chief General Munir a few days back, just before this attack, where he started talking about the two-nation theory, how Hindus are very different from Muslims, and a certain thought which he had about what was wrong with India, how he was not going to let the Kashmiri brethren down. Is there any link, or do you think that's a stated position which Pakistan has adopted over a long
I think that is Pakistan's. In fact, I was surprised at the stir it created in India, because I saw it as old wine in old bottles. I mean, there's nothing new in it at all. The two-nation theory is the foundation on which Pakistan exists. K in Pakistan, we should never forget, stands for Kashmir. It is their foundational principle. So there's nothing new in what he said. Perhaps there was a certain intensity and a venom in which he said it, which made people focus on it more. But I don't think we can, this was a major terrorist attack. It had obviously been planned for some time. It must have been SOP'd quite thoroughly. I don't think you can relate it directly to what has happened in the last 4 or 5 days before that. Okay. There is a longer background, I'm sure.
Right. Aniruddh, you spend your time in the UK, and I was looking at some pictures which came from the UK today, where outside the Pakistani High Commission in London, Indian protesters ended up going there. And it led to some pretty ugly scenes, right? Where an official of the Pakistani High Commission was holding a poster of our own officer Abhinandan, whose plane had come down, and then he had to be released from Pakistan. The Indian community outside, right? It's always very, very aggressive when it comes to issues, certainly of national security. But in your understanding, do you think this time around, is there a greater outrage? Is there greater anger that once again we're back to where we started from?
I think the outrage in the Indian community outside is pretty much similar to the outrage in India. I don't think it's very different. I think over the last several years, the overseas Indian community, if anything, has become more bellicose than people here. So I think we are seeing a continuation of that. I think this attack, though, and what you saw in London is a little bit sort of more serious, in the sense it's also coming on the heels of what happened in Israel and the pro-Palestine movement and protests that have been rife across London over the last 18 months or so. And I think there is this very strong feeling amongst a large section of the community in the UK, not just Indian, but also British and white British, that that terrorists have been getting a free pass in a lot of places. And so I think you're going to see much more of that. I mean, I read some reports from the UK today where it was not just Indians in front of the Pakistani High Commission. It was also a lot of Jews, and it was some Iranians protesting against the regime and that kind of thing. So I think in the UK it's sort of morphing a little bit into a wider thing, and that's not surprising, I think, given where the world is.
No, because you've served in Canada, and Jyotsna is here as well, and I was talking to Jyotsna Mohan about it, another author who's written on Pratap. I wonder, when it comes to dealing with Khalistan, right? There was a sentiment which existed for a long time that all pro-Khalistani people were being harbored in Canada. And see how we responded to that situation. It has led to some uncomfortable questions being raised against the Indian state as well. But it seems to push the lever in a certain direction. Why have we been able to settle the Khalistan question decisively, but we've not been able to handle the Pakistan question, to that degree? Is it like...
Well, first of all, I would question, we have not been able to settle the Khalistan question decisively at all.
To that degree, I'm saying, to that degree.
Canada remains the epicenter of the global Khalistan movement, but it also exists in USA, it exists in Australia, it exists in Germany, it exists in the Netherlands, it exists in many parts of the world. So to say that we have completely quashed the Khalistan movement, no. But the good thing is, the only silver lining is that it is basically the hardcore Sikh diaspora outside India which still harbors this dream of an independent state called Khalistan. I mean, the Sikhs in India, if you look at it, they have moved on completely because they have seen the horrors, what led to Operation Blue Star, etc. And they do not want to revisit those horrors once again. And they are perfectly, living in perfect peace and security in progressive Punjab. They have no intention. It's these people who left India in the 70s, whose image, I mean, I met Sikhs in Canada who still said there are tanks inside Harmandir Sahib. I mean, this is because they have not visited India since then, and they still continue to harbor a very old and anachronistic image of India. Having said that, you said that, if we have partially solved the Sikh problem, why have we not been able to solve the Khalistan problem? Because the Khalistan issue does not have an external backing. I mean, in Pakistan, as Ambassador Raghavan and Professor Pushpesh Pant will say, other countries have armies. Here, the army has a country. I mean, the very fact that the militarization of Pakistan, the fact that, within the first few years of the foundation of Pakistan, the military took over, and they have been in, most of the patches of civil administration was seen as temporary abeyance of military law, but most of the time it's been the Pakistan military which has been calling the shots, and for them keeping up an adversarial position with India justifies their existence. Why would Pakistan need a fat cat army budget? Why would the Fauji corporation be in every sector of human activity in Pakistan if India was a friend? So for them it is, and if you look at it, the number of attempts that we have made to extend the hand of friendship to Pakistan, Vajpayee Sahib going in the famous Lahore trip. I was myself, Ambassador Raghavan were on that famous trip to Raiwind when Prime Minister made an unscheduled visit from Kabul to Lahore, and we went, in helicopters to meet Nawaz Sharif to talk peace. How we can break out of the logjam, how the two leaders can think out of the box and create a solution which, which can then be implemented at the lower level. But within a week of that, as you know, Pathankot happened. And that was exactly because no one from the army ISI was present in that particular meeting. So I think that is what we have to contend against. The deep state in Pakistan, they need to have a continued level of hostility with India so that they can justify their own existence. Till we are able to tamp down on that, till Pakistan becomes a normal democratic state where the army does not have an outsized controlling interest in the polity, I think we are going to continue to face this particular issue.
This phrase which is being used by Vikas Swarup, normal democratized state, is that a utopian concept for Pakistan?
Well,
can it not happen?
I don't know, but what I do know is that you can do nothing about it.
Yes.
Pakistanis themselves have to do something about it. Whether they will succeed or not is very much an open question. But it is not in your hands to create a kind of Pakistan which you want. Pakistan is the 4th or 5th largest country in the world. It is 250 million people. In many ways, they are fiercely nationalistic, just like we are. You have no instrument in your hand that you can change Pakistan. Both hawks and doves in India are wrong on their basic premise in thinking that somehow a set of policies from India can change Pakistan. It's not possible. Only Pakistanis can change Pakistan. Till that happens, you have to live with it.
And it's interesting that you say that, because just a couple of days back, I was doing a broadcast, a digital broadcast on Twitter. And I had a lot of audiences, surprisingly, from Pakistan that day. And I had people from Kashmir. And I was surprised, Ambassador Raghavan. Many viewers from Pakistan were saying, boss, you all are thinking that we are supporting this army regime. We're not supporting this army regime. Right? So we are also as perturbed as you all are. But so who has a solution then? Where does this go?
Well, I don't know where it goes, but I think we have to keep one or two things in mind.
What do we do? Let me put it this way. What should India do from this stage onwards?
Well, I think this is not policy, this is common sense. First of all, you have to look around the world and, accept that neighborhoods are very difficult places. Look at what is happening between US and Canada today. And this is, these were countries which were, for all practical purposes, one space. Certainly in strategic and economic terms. And so if you look around the world, you understand that neighborhoods are very difficult. Pakistan, you can think of Pakistan as, it sucks all the oxygen out of the room. But you look at your relationship with Nepal, you look at your relationship with Bangladesh, you look at your relationship with Sri Lanka, each of them at times has been very, very difficult. So let's not be utopian and only look for perfect solutions. I think that's one thing we can do. We can try to look for optimum positions to be in and not look for, the best case only. Secondly, we have to always remember that we are the big boys in South Asia. The others are much smaller, so their insecurities about you, are that much more larger. I think
is that the reason? Whether it is Bangladesh, you see the interim advisor, Yunus Khan, suddenly making a statement one day that I am the custodian of the rivers which flow in the Seven Sisters, the northeastern parts of the country. We've seen the statements which were made in Maldives earlier. The positions which were taken. Hostilities have been experienced both from Nepal as well as Sri Lanka. Is it jealousy, or should I ask you a slightly difficult question? Is it bad policy from the Indian Ministry of External Affairs?
No, I think, look, we have a very clearly stated policy of neighborhood first, where we have almost that, unilaterally we will give benefits and concessions to our neighbors, except with the one exception of Pakistan, of course, because of its continued hostility. And if you look at it, we have managed to turn things around also. I mean, today, if you look at our relationship with Maldives, look at where it was, India out and, all that. And today, now look at the relationship now where China is feeling the heat, that Maldives is getting too close to India. Look at the relationship with Sri Lanka now. I mean, at one time, there was a very strong anti-India sentiment in Sri Lanka, but the way we bailed them out during their economic crisis, the way we held them with the IMF negotiations, today our relationship with Sri Lanka is among the best ever. Similarly with Nepal also. I think Bangladesh is a special case because of, you all know the history of Sheikh Hasina, regime change, her being sheltered in India, still making some statements which are not conducive to the current regime in Bangladesh. So obviously they will take pot shots in India as long as we keep Sheikh Hasina in our protective embrace, so to speak.
Pushpesh, let me come back to Kashmir for a moment. You see, does this terror strike show that the entire messaging which was coming for a long time from the centre side, that all was fine in Kashmir, that Article 370 was abrogated, and to quote the Home Minister, who said in Parliament, right, that हमने ये किया और परिंदा भी पर नहीं मार पाया. So it was supposed to be a great policy victory for the Indian state.
No, I would beg to differ entirely. I think I'm with Ambassador Raghavan totally. I think this terror attack, however gruesome, however condemnable, is a score for the park. Have we forgotten the number of casualties over the past 2 years of Indian Army personnel which are not being celebrated, ki tirange mein aa gaye, shaheed ho gaye, almost go unnoticed, even officers. Have we kept count of the people who have been killed in the Kashmiri civil service, teachers, traders, etc.? The numbers would be, those innocent, unarmed, killed, would be far higher than 25. I don't wish to make a statement which is going to be resented, but I do think that we have been lying through our teeth about the normalcy in Kashmir. So have we forgotten that before Umar Abdullah was there, the governor of Kashmir has been having under the presidential rule total control, which means the center. Somewhere the buck stops, whether it is in Manipur, whether it is in Kashmir. So the less we talk about the normalcy in Kashmir, the more seriously we think in terms of realistically the loss of lives of Indian armed forces personnel, officers, civilians, policemen, teachers, etc. in Kashmir. The number is much larger, and it would be, as he rightly said, that we should have expected कि वहां आ रहे हैं, कुछ न कुछ होगा, थोड़ा बहुत एक token show या हो जाएगा. That's number one. I think Ambassador Raghavan made another point which set me thinking. ये tactical है. हमारे संग दिक्कत ये है कि we have a strategical mindset. मगर हम कर कुछ ले रहे हैं, हमारा tactical response भी नहीं है. I would also like to respond to what Ambassador Swarup said. He said something very nice again, which set me thinking. The whole world condemns the terrorists. The whole world is with India. But has the whole world condemned Pakistan? Pakistan says, give us credible evidence. Short of the smoking gun, what credible evidence is there which is incontrovertible?
But I have a problem with this credible evidence business also, and Ambassador Raghavan would take this one. When the UPA was in power, how many dossiers were shared? There was this term that was created, sharing a terror dossier. So Chidambaram would go share dossiers with the Pakistan. Where is that led us?
But Bhupendra, before you come to Ambassador Raghavan, I think still the point is there कि आप कितनी बार क्रेडिबल एविडेंस देंगे,
सामने वाला मानने को नहीं तैयार है ना,
कभी नहीं मानेगा क्या?
तो फिर एविडेंस का क्या वैल्यू?
As long as cloaks and daggers game is being played, there is always plausible deniability built into an action. And I would also briefly comment on what our fellow panelists said. मुझे लगता है कि what the Indian diaspora does abroad is not going to make a policy difference at all. It is what the Indians in this country are going to do about how much are they going to put up with silently and not ask where the buck stops.
Sure. Ambassador Raghavan, this business of evidence.
Well, I think that the dossiers and the evidence did make an impact. It did not make an impact in 1 month or 2 months, but certainly if you see how Pakistan was isolated over the next decade, in terms of what happened under the FATF, how its image suffered, and most of all, how it felt the heat of isolation, you can say that perhaps that was an effective step at that time. It's not to say that this is the only step you can take. At different times you have resorted to different improvisations because each time it's been a massive and grave provocation. After the parliament attack, you resorted to coercive diplomacy by mobilization. It's not to say it didn't have any impact, it did. Similarly, after Mumbai, you said the best way of dealing with this is to put international pressure and to isolate Pakistan. Did it solve the problem of Pakistan? No. Did it achieve certain goals? Yes, it did. As I said, the important thing is that we have to look for optimum outcomes. If we are a purist and think that tomorrow we are going to change the nature of South Asia and we'll be living in a perfect world, I think we have to be realistic.
Okay. How much, where does the American question, Vikas, on this one come into play? There's a democratic regime, Republican regime, and we've all seen, this great camaraderie which seems to exist between the Prime Minister and the US President. How much can we really count on the Americans to help us find this optimal solution, which Ambassador Raghavan is speaking about?
So I think you answered it yourself when you mentioned the statement by Tulsi Gabbard, that where it comes to hot pursuit of terrorists who have been proven to have been taken part in this particular massacre, I think the Americans will be more than happy to share intelligence and operational guidelines or whatever it is that can help us nab them. But till you establish that, I don't think Trump, at the end of the day, let's be very, very clear, he has said, I am an anti-war president. He wants wars to end, he doesn't want wars to begin. So I don't think he would look very kindly at an India-Pakistan escalation which goes from tactical dogfights and things like that to a full-fledged hot war. I think that will really complicate life for him as well, because here he's trying to end the Ukraine war, he's trying to end the Gaza war, and he would not want to dirty his hands with a new war starting.
So if a military conflict was to unfold,
yes,
you don't think the Americans would back that?
No, because I think you have already heard Trump yesterday only saying this Kashmir issue dates back to 1500 years, and I'm friends with both India and with Pakistan. So he was very even-handed. He did not say that India is right and it is justified in whatever it's doing. So I think is, if we are backing on the Americans bailing us out of a precipitous cycle of escalation, then I don't think that's very prudent. So I think we have to think, as Ambassador Raghavan and Professor Pushpesh Pant have been advising, we have to think through our options very, very carefully.
Okay, Ambassador Raghavan, here's the other point, and I want both you and Pushpesh Pant to weigh in on this one. It's a very uncomfortable question to pose, but I think time has come for us to look at that question. There is a certain optic which has been created that the regional parties in Kashmir, the PDP and the National Conference, that somehow they are soft when it comes to Pakistan, somehow they are soft when it comes to dealing with separatism. Do you think, while we're speaking about finding all these optimal solutions, the all-party meeting which was called by the central government, the National Conference, which is the incumbent party in the state, was not even called? Where does it point us? What does it really imply?
Well, I don't buy that thesis. I don't see the political parties in J&K as somehow being soft on Pakistan. I think because they are rooted in J&K, they have the most stakes in a better India-Pakistan relationship. There's no doubt about that. And the same applies to a great extent, for instance, to parties in Punjab. Because they have certain stakes in more conducive atmosphere, because that helps the economy, it helps people in terms of employment and so on. So I don't think that the National Conference or other parties
buy that.
I don't buy that they are pro-Pakistan. In fact, I was in Pakistan in 2014 when the BJP and the PDP reached an alliance on the government in Pakistan and in J&K. And in that time in India, many people criticized that. In Pakistan, the PDP-BJP alliance was seen as a strategic defeat for them. I mean, it was greeted with a sense of great dismay that the BJP, which they saw as this Hindu nationalist force, how can it have such a good understanding with the regional party in J&K? So I think we need to develop much stronger relations. That means the national parties need to have much stronger relations with political parties in J&K, because in the end, that is the only long-term trajectory which is sustainable.
If you look at the scenario right now, you see, if the sentiment that I'm talking about is a sentiment which actually exists in vast circles of the BJP and the central government, that there is a problem when it comes to the state parties, the regional parties in Jammu and Kashmir. There are statements which have been made by certain legislators of the National Conference calling tourism as cultural invasion. There are statements which have been made by some other individuals. I can tell you that Digvijay Singh, former Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister, his brother Lakshman Singh, as of today made this comment, and it's going all viral on social media, where he's putting it on record that he thinks that Farooq Abdullah and Omar Abdullah are stooges of the Pakistani regime. Now, I don't know how to,
I think anyone who knows a little bit about the history of J&K will know that that is not true.
100%.
Pushpesh.
No, Suniya, there is a very nice of Mr. Swarup to remind us that the K in Pakistan is Kashmir. But the problem of Pakistan is not confined to Kashmir, and not only to state parties in Kashmir. Let me give you 3 examples. What is Kerala? The Muslims in Kerala and the Muslim League, with which the secular party can join hands and form a government. Corruption large scale, which would outdo size-wise the Kashmiri one. What about the state of West Bengal and the recent events in Murshidabad? What about the polarization of Hindus and Muslims for electoral gain and saying, "Jao, Pakistan chale jao. Ye tum to aulad ho, Aurangzeb ki, Babar ki, Turko-Afghans ki," and so on. So as long as you try to divide a wedge between Hindus and Muslims for electoral gain, and India is the 3rd or the 4th largest concentration of Muslim population in the world and distributed all over different states. So you say, "Nikal jao, ye Pakistani hai," and you treat your majority of Muslim citizens as stooges of Pakistan, sleeping lords of Pakistan, is quite true that in a population of 1800 million, even if there is 0.01% traitors, the number would be reasonably high. But you don't keep treating a sizable segment of your population distributed over 3 or 4 states where they form majority, and every time that happens, there is bulldozer justice, there is running down of this community.
Well, reality is this, that Pakistan has been a part of our domestic political discourse for a very long time. I can take you back to 2015 during the Bihar Assembly elections when the BJP had just come to power at the center, and the Home Minister then, who was the BJP president, he went to Bihar and he said that if we lose the elections here, crackers will be burnt in Pakistan. Right? So Pakistan has been used as a very convenient tool, I agree with you, over a period of time. But is it that the problem of Pakistan or problem of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir has any link with what is going on in Murshidabad, or in some cases, crimes which are committed against a minority community? I wouldn't be sure on that. But Aniruddh, there is the other side to this debate, and then I'd like to throw the floor open here. The business community. You're a banker. You've been a banker. You've run your own businesses now. When a conflict of this scale erupts, when all of us are looking at what's going to happen tomorrow, how does it impact the business community? How does the business community look at the idea of a war?
I mean, I think the reality is that the Indian business community hasn't had to face a proper war for a very long time. And the Indian economy is going through a phase that it's not been in historically when it was at war, right? So from that perspective, all bets are probably off. I guess the global backdrop to all this is the Trumpian chaos in the markets. And that is only going to intensify throughout this year. as the tariffs actually start hitting and empty cargo containers start docking in New York port and like prices start going up over there and all the blowback from there. I think the other risk to probably look out for is the potential Israeli attack on Iran, which in the absence of a peace deal with or a nuclear deal with Iran in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think is almost a dead certainty that Israel is going to go after Iran's nuclear capacity. That will push up oil prices across the world. That's going to harm India's economy. So I think if the Indian government is planning an all-out war in the backdrop of a very uncertain global macro environment anyways, where you have a risk of inflation going up, oil prices rising, then I'd be very worried from a business perspective as to, what's going to happen, right? Because, I mean, the last time you saw a major war breakout was Russia-Ukraine, and what that did to the markets, I think is pretty fresh.
Okay. Ambassador, I have one final question to you. Give me 2 steps. I mean, certain steps have been taken by the Indian state. If you were there on the hot seat, what would be those 2 things that you would say should be done, which will give this message both to the domestic constituency as well as to the global constituency that the right action has been taken by India, right, mature, democratic action taken?
Well, first of all, thank God I've retired. We should not underestimate the scale or the difficulties of handling a situation like this. And we should hope that the government handles it with both firmness and also wisdom. And I'm sure they will be doing so. They're very experienced. They know what to do. But let's not underestimate the scale of the potential crisis we are in, and not treat this as some kind of a video game where you can somehow choreograph your way to the right cocktail of measures to be taken. It's a very, very difficult situation. So I think one has to be quite serious about it. But as I said,
one step, if there's one step you think.
No, I think, as I said, I think, because it was announced so quickly, I don't think we have internalized what a major step has already been announced. Revocation, the Indus Waters Treaty was one of the pillars of the riparian system in South Asia.
Okay.
And whatever may have been its drawbacks, and every treaty has its drawbacks, the fact is it was never touched in previous very difficult situations. So this just shows how limited are the options now before us. So I don't think we should underestimate what we have done. I do hope that wiser people in Pakistan understand the gravity of the situation and also the sense of outrage in India. Let's not carry away and be narcissistic about this. This was a grave provocation which has been visited upon us, and I can only say, if I was in charge, I would try my best to make people in Pakistan understand the gravity of the step which has been taken.
But here's the other point, Vikas Swarup. If the Indus Water Treaty suspension, is the right step, I'm hearing from the Pakistani side that they say we'll forget the Shimla agreement. Let's forget the Shimla. So do you think it's possible that we can all go back to 1950s and 1960s?
Well, first of all, in terms of scale, the impact, I think the Shimla agreement has, pales in I mean, let's not forget, just as Egypt is the gift of the Nile, 80% of Pakistan's hydropower comes from the Indus system. 80% of their agriculture, 1/3 of their power generation comes from the Indus system. So it is a huge thing. And yes, Ambassador Raghavan is absolutely right. Currently, we do not have the capacity to stop the flow of water to Pakistan because of, most of our projects there are run-of-the-river projects which do not have large storage capacities. But since we have also announced, the Water Resources Minister has said, we have a short, medium and long-term plan. That will inject an element of uncertainty in Pakistan, that tomorrow India could starve our entire agriculture of water, and then, what will Pakistan be? So that is why I think the gravity of that particular step should not be underestimated. The fact that it survived 3 wars with Pakistan, and yet we have announced it this time as the first, not as the last in the escalatory measures, but as the first, I think is a very, very serious step. And to the extent that Pakistan understands the gravity of that, and works with India to apprehend these people, ensure that this does not happen, I think it would have the right effect. But if Pakistan takes it that this is an act of war and we cannot let this go past, then all bets are off.
Okay, and final question to you then, Pushpesh. Politically speaking, for the Prime Minister, to be very specific, how big is this challenge? 10 years as Prime Ministership, do you think this is the moment, the challenge, which will define Narendra Modi's legacy?
No, I don't think so. I think people have said that, a supreme failure guarantees your place in history. I don't think that Mr. Modi, unlike Mr. Trump, is looking for that. I think the ultimate challenge for Mr. Modi is to keep India intact despite all provocations from Pakistan and China and others, not to make it a house divided unto itself, to go back to Gettysburg Address that can't stand on it alone or apart.
Okay, that was quite interesting. Thank you to all of you.